माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज निरंजन जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज निरंजन जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा Purushotama Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtotra Shatashi Srimad Abhay Charana His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtotra Shatashi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this evening's Srimad Bhagavatam class from ISKCON Sydney. We welcome you all to hear and to join us in relishing the beautiful verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we are going to look at a very beautiful chapter from Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is Canto 10, Chapter 21. So here the gopis are glorifying the songs from the flute of Sri Krishna. As the Lord enters Vrindavana along with his dear Gopa friends and Balram, and as Lord Krishna is playing on his flute, the gopis are just mesmerized, they are attracted, they are captivated by his flute, and they speak to each other. And this way they are actually remembering the beautiful form and all the activities of Lord Krishna. And right now, when we are all in the midst of this lockdown, just waiting for it to end very soon, it's a nice opportunity for us to take a trip to Vrindavan and just immerse ourselves in the thoughts of Shri Krishna. So before we begin, let's do Mangalacharan and then we will hear and sing from Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhuter Mahadpi Yaima Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shete Yadamo Shupurusha Bhunter Gunamsho Dashashoda Satmaka Solam Prashishta Bhagavan Vachansime Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanagatam Katha Amritam Satata Pibatam Bhakti Vedanta Margapantanam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Hare Krishna again. So I wish to offer my humble obeisances at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all my Shiksha Gurus and all the Vaishnavas. Wish to take your blessings. And then let us now speak and hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. So as we said, we are looking at chapter 21 from canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it is a beautiful scene. So one day in the season of autumn, it's a beautiful atmosphere in Vrindavana. So all the lakes and the waters and the rivers, they're all so clear. And the birds are all flying around in the forest of Vrindavana. And they are just hovering over all the trees that are beautifully flowering. And there is a fragrant breeze that's blowing, that's carrying the aroma of the lotuses that are blossoming in the waters of Vrindavana. And in this pleasing atmosphere, Lord Krishna enters Vrindavana along with Lord Balram and all his Gopa friends. And how does he enter? He is just dancing away into Vrindavan and he's playing on his flute. And as he's entering like this, the gopis in the village of, near Vrindavana, they are hearing the sounds of the flute of Vrindavana. And they are actually really wishing to just go there and look at Krishna, but unable to just leave their household chores and go there and hear the flute of Krishna. What they are doing, wherever they are talking to each other, they are conversing, and they are describing Lord Krishna's beauty and his flute music. So this way they are absorbed in the thoughts of Sri Krishna. And that's what we are going to try and do today. So being in this lockdown, we can't even go to the temple, but wherever we are, we will try to remember Sri Krishna, and by chanting these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, we are having the personal companionship of Sri Krishna with us at this very moment. So let us hear. So the first verse from this chapter, where Shukdev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj. Itam sharat swachha jhalam padmakara sugandhina nyavishad vayuna vatam sago gopalako chutaha. So this verse says that during the season of autumn, when all the waters are just so pleasant in Vrindavana, Krishna is entering Vrindavana along with his Gopa friends. And there is a cool breeze that is flowing. And the second verse, Kusumita vanaraji sushmi bringha dvijakula gushta sarash sarin mahidram madhupatira bagahya charayanta saha pashupala balaschuku javenu. So here we see that all the lakes and the rivers that are flowing in Vrindavana, they're all just resounding the beautiful sounds of all the flocks of birds that are flying around in between all the trees, and the maddened bees that are buzzing around. And along with Lord Balram, Sri Krishna, who is called as Madhupati here, he entered the forest along with all the cows. So as he's herding the cows, he's entering and he begins to play the flute. And now, and how is he playing the flute? It is beautifully said here, Chukuja Venu. That is, he's very skillfully playing the flute to match with the sounds of the birds that are singing. So that's what is meant by Chukuja Venu. So all this is very nicely explained by our acharyas, and it's really very soothing when we hear these verses and when we try to meditate on them deeply. So the next verse, Tad Braja Striya Ashritya Venu Geetam Smarodayam Kashit Paroksham Krishnasya Svasakhibhyon Vavarnayan. So here now we see about what the gopis are doing. So on hearing the song of Sri Krishna's flute, now that influences the gopis. That is what happens. Cupid or Manmata begins to influence them. Or rather, he strikes his beautiful flower arrows that entice the gopis and that enchants them with these amorous desires for Krishna. And at that time, they start describing to each other. So the gopis begin to speak to each other. Barha pidam natavara vapu karnayo karnikaram bibradvasah kanaka kapisham vaijayantim chamalam randran venur adara sudaya Purayan Gopa Vrinde Vrindaranyam Swapadaramanam Pravishadgita Kirtihi. So wearing a beautiful peacock feather, Barha Pidam, Natavara Vapuhu. So Lord Krishna displayed his beautiful form as the greatest of dancers as he entered Vrindavana. So he didn't just normally walk like, okay, I'm just doing a jaywalk into Vrindavana. No, he came dancing into Vrindavana with such joy and pleasure, giving pleasure to all the cows and the Gopa friends. And he's wearing beautiful by Jayanti garland. So a garland that's made out of all different flowers and pearls and stones and such a lovely flower garland he's wearing. And with Karnikara flowers, blue Karnikara flowers on his ears. So like this, with such an attractive and dramatic form, Lord Krishna is entering the Vrindavana forest. And Vrindaranyam Swapada Ramanam. So the whole land of Vrindavana is glorified because it has the beautiful footprints of Sri Krishna. So from this we can see that whenever we have the touch of Sri Krishna in our life or wherever we are, then that place becomes Vrindavan. So when we welcome Krishna into our heart, into our mind, by hearing about him, by chanting his holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And when we chant these beautiful verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, then this is a sound incarnation of Sri Krishna himself. So just as the land of Vrindavana was glorified and became all auspicious by the footprints of Sri Krishna, when we keep remembering Sri Krishna, when we chant his names, when we speak about him, when we hear about him, then through those sound vibrations, Sri Krishna enters our heart, he enters our mind, and then it becomes a festival for our mind. We can forget all our worries and whatever disturbances we may be facing in our life, everything just disappears because of Shri Krishna's presence. And as he entered, he was playing on his flute. So it says that Randran Venur Adhara Sudaya. So by placing the flute on his beautiful lips, he started playing the flute. Iti Venuravam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharam Shrutva Vrajastriya Sarva Varnayanto Bhire Bhire. So now Shukdev Goswami is continuing. He is telling to Parikshit Maharaj. So here he is saying that, O King Rajan, when the gopis or the young maidens of Braja, when they heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates all living beings. That is Sarva Bhuta Manoharam. Manoharam means it just steals our minds. It captivates our minds. So when the gopis heard this, they embraced each other and they started describing about Lord Krishna's beautiful music that's emanating from his flute. So even though initially they became very speechless, they couldn't actually talk because they were, attacked by Cupid. So at that moment, they became speechless. But just on remembering Krishna's form in that ecstatic mood, then what happened? They started to speak to each other. So from verses 7 to 19, we see how each gopi is describing about Lord Krishna's the flute sounds. Shri Gopya Uchuhu Akshan Vatam Phalamidam Na Param Vidamaha Sakya Pashun Anuviveshayatorvayasyai Bhaktram Brajesha Sutayor Anuvenu Jushtam Yairvanipitam Anurakta Katakshamoksham. So here the gopis are actually glorifying those eyes that take the beautiful vision of Sri Krishna. They are saying that those eyes that see the beautiful form of Sri Krishna and Balram as they are entering the forest of Vrindavana, along with all the cows, those eyes are the most fortunate. And that vision is the perfection of one's vision. That is Akshanvatam Phalam. That is the fruit of seeing something. So here in the purport, we see what Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is explaining. He's saying that the perfection of our eyes is to see Krishna, to take his darshan. So here he's saying that the gopis are wondering, what is the use of being within the shackles of, one's family life if one doesn't engage their eyes in the vision of Sri Krishna, which is so wonderful. What is the purpose of having those eyes? So from this we can see that the vision of Sri Krishna, who is the supreme object of our love, then that is our ultimate goal. That is the perfection for our eyes. So there is no point if we use our eyes to just keep looking at mundane things around the world, which sometimes may be meaningless. But when we use our eyes to take darshan of Sri Krishna, then that is the purpose for which we have our eyes. So then let's move on. Now the next verse is another very beautiful verse. Chuta pravala barha sabakotpalabja malalupritta paridana vichitra veshau madhye virejaturalam pashupala goshyam range yata natavarau Kvachagayamanau. So here the gopis are describing the beautiful form of Sri Krishna, how wonderfully he is dressed, how attractively he is dressed. So Chuta Pravala Barhas Tabakot Balabja. So Lord Krishna is, wearing beautiful things from nature. So it's not like he's just wearing some ordinary, just some artificial flowers or something. But he's wearing these beautiful lotuses, utpala, and then abja, lilies, and sabaka with bunches of flowers that are decorated around him. And wearing chuta, that is fresh mango sprouts. So all this he's wearing, and along with that, Malanupritta Paridana Vichitra Vesho. That is, his garlands are touching his beautiful, shining yellow garment. That is, that he is wearing. And it is Vichitra Vesho. That means it looks so beautiful, amazing, the dress that he is wearing. Madhye Vire Jaturalam Pashupala Gushyam. So surrounded by all the cowherd boys, Pashupala Goshyam, in the middle of them, Madhye, he is shining brilliantly. So Krishna and Balram, just in the center of all of them, they are shining beautifully. Viraja means shining, brilliance. So like that, Lord Krishna and Balram are in the center. And how Range Yata Natavarau Tvacha Gaya Manav. So just as a dancer would enter a dramatic stage, like that, Lord Krishna and Balram, they are dancing and they are entering, and sometimes they are also singing. Then, Gopya Kimacharad Ayam Kushalam Smavenu Damodaradara Sudam Api Gopikanam Bhunte Swayam Yadavashishtara Sampradinyo Krishyatvacho Shrumumucho Staravo Yatarya. So here the gopis are describing the glory of the flute that is touching the lips of Sri Krishna. So they are saying how fortunate is the flute that it is actually getting all the nectar from Sri Krishna's lips, which is actually meant for us. So the gopis are here now feeling that, we are meant to be enjoying Shri Krishna's sweet lips that just pours nectar. But then look at the flute. Actually, the flute is taking all that, and we are only getting a little taste of it that is left after that. And then here it is said that how the bamboo trees which are on the river bank. So we know that the flute is made from the bamboo trees. So the bamboo trees are actually, they are shedding tears of joy because their son, who is the flute, is actually touching the lips of Krishna. So they are in that mode of ecstasy, in that mode of feeling that, the flute, which is actually a part of us, it is touching Sri Krishna. And our acharyas also explain that the bamboo tree is also crying, that is the sap that flows from the tree. They are actually kind of comparing it to saying that that's like the tears that is coming from the bamboo tree. Also because they are feeling that separation, that the tree itself is not able to touch Sri Krishna. So there are two different modes that we can see here. And the river that is flowing along where the bamboo trees are arising, the river is also feeling so jubilant, and it is offering the lotus flowers to Shri Krishna as a present. So that comes later on as well in one of the verses. Let's go to the next one. This is again very beautiful. Vrindavanam sakhi bhuvo vitanoti kirtim yad devaki sutapadambuja lakshmi govinda venum anumatta mayura nrityam prekshatri sanva varatanya samasta sattvam. So here the gopis are describing the glory of Vrindavana, because Vrindavana is so fortunate, as we saw, because it is getting the footprints of Shri Krishna all the time. And Vrindavana is spreading the glories of the planet Earth. So nowhere else we see, Krishna going personally and playing and having fun with his friends and killing demons and running around and eating and having fun with all the gopas, dancing with the gopis. All this is happening in the land of Vrindavana. And therefore, Vrindavana is glorifying the planet Earth, which had the fortune of having Shri Krishna's personal presence. And then they are saying that actually Vrindavana obtained the treasure of the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. That is Labdha Lakshmi. So Yad Devaki Sutta Padambuja Labdha Lakshmi. So Devaki's son, Krishna's Padambuja, lotus feet, Labdha Lakshmi. So they are accumulating it to they're calling it as a treasure, the lotus footprints of Shri Krishna. And on hearing Krishna's flute, the peacocks are just maddened and they are dancing in joy. So here our acharyas are beautifully explaining that how the peacocks are dancing around Shri Krishna according to the way he is playing the flute, according to the same rhythm, according to the same notes that he's playing. The peacocks are all dancing jubilantly around him. And then with gratitude, they offer their peacock feather to Shri Krishna. And then Krishna takes the feather and he puts it on his head. And also to see this beautiful dramatic scene that is happening around, all the other creatures like the animals and the birds, they go on top of the hills. Because from a top view, you get a beautiful vision. So they're all flying to the top of the hill, and from there, they are looking how Krishna is dancing and how he is playing the flute and how all these peacocks are dancing around him. Next one. Dhanyasma mudha gatayopi harinya eta yanandanandanam upata vichitra vesham Akarnya Venuranitam Saha Krishna Sara Pujanta Durvirachitam Pranayavalukai. So here the gopis are glorifying the deer and the doe. So we know that the doe is a female deer. Doe, a deer, a female deer. So they're saying how nicely the doe and the deer, they are so fortunate, dhanya. They're saying that even though they are in the form of an animal, that is animal which is actually in the mode of ignorance, but still, how fortunate are they? Because along with their husband, so the doe, the female deer, along with her husband, the deer, together they are worshipping Sri Krishna by closing their eyes. They are worshipping and they are giving affectionate glances to Sri Krishna. So our acharyas are explaining that how, here the gopis are also feeling a little jealous of the doe, because here the doe is going along with the deer together with her husband. Whereas sometimes for the gopis, their husbands would stop them from running away to Krishna. So like that, they're saying that probably the gopis are also feeling that mood. But then in Vrindavan, we see that all our emotions are in relation to Krishna. It is in relation to Sri Krishna's pleasure, whether we cry or whether we get angry or whether we get, whether the gopis get jealous of each other. It is all Krishna's orchestration, because he wants to see that amongst his beautiful devotees. So the next one. Krishnam nirikshya vanitotsavarupashilam shrutva cha tatvanita venu vivittagitam devyo vimanagataya smaranundasara brashyat prasuna kabara mumuhur vinivyaha. Another beautiful verse which here describes about the wives of the demigods. So sometimes the demigods would fly on different airplanes. So on their celestial airplanes, they are aeroplanes. They are actually hovering over Vrindavana. And when the wives of the demigods, when they see this beautiful scene in Vrindavana, with Krishna playing the flute and the peacocks dancing and all the cowherd boys around them singing their glories, then it becomes a festival for their mind. Vanithotsava Rupa Shilam. So this beautiful form of Sri Krishna, it becomes a festival for their mind. And then what happens? They are completely drawn to Sri Krishna, losing their heart. And they lose their composure because they are now completely drawn to Sri Krishna in their mind. Kavasya Krishna Mukha Nirgata Venu Geeta Piyusham Uttabhita Karna Putai Pibantyaha Savasnutanstanapaya Kavalasmatastur Govindamatmani Drisharu Kalas Prashantyaha. So here we see how the cows are responding to Sri Krishna's flute. So Govinda means the one, the Lord who gives pleasure to the cows. That is, Go means the cows. And also the Lord who gives pleasure to our senses. So here, how are the cows hearing? So they are having their ears raised, and through their ears, they are just taking the nectar of Sri Krishna's flute. They're just drinking the nectar of Sri Krishna's flute. And the calves that are drinking the milk from their mothers, they have their mouths full and they're just stunned on hearing Krishna's flute. And then what happens? They just close their eyes and they just embrace Krishna in their heart. So such beautiful verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is just completely unparalleled. We cannot compare it with anything because it is Sri Krishna himself. Next one. Prayo batamba vihagamunayo vanesmin Krishne kshitam taduditam kalavenu geetam Aruhya edrumabhujan ruchira pravalan Shrinvanti militadrisho vigatanya vacha. So here the gopis sometimes call each other as Amba, that is, oh mother, maybe an elderly gopi. So they're saying in the Vrindavana forest, all the birds, so here they are now speaking about how the birds are responding to Shri Krishna's flute. So the birds are just rising on top of the trees. They are sitting on the branches. And there they're just closing their eyes and in silence, they are just hearing Krishna's flute. Just like sages. So here our acharyas are explaining that just as how the sages are immersed in the thoughts of Krishna by closing their eyes, that is without any distraction. Because sometimes when we keep our eyes wide open and when we try to do different things and we are also trying to remember Krishna, it might be very hard. So just as how the sages close their eyes and they are immersed in thoughts of Krishna, like that, the birds are also closing their eyes and they are listening to the sweet music from Shri Krishna's flute. And also Ruchira Pravalan, that is all the branches of the trees, even they are ecstatic on hearing Krishna's flute. Nadyastadaatadupadharya mukunda geetam Avartalakshita bhava bagna vega Alinganastagitam urmi bhuchet murare Grinanti padayugalam kamalopahara. So here the rivers, what are the rivers doing? When the river, like the Yamuna and the Ganges that flow near Vrindavana, when Krishna walks along playing his flute, and when the river hears the flute sounds, it gets disturbed and it goes into a whirlpool because the mind of the river is again attracted to Krishna's flute and it just becomes unsteady. It goes here and there because it's not able to hold itself from being away from Krishna. But then what does it do then? The river, along with the arms of its waves. So the waves of the river, they go around Krishna's lotus feet and they surround Lord Krishna's lotus feet like putting one's arms around. And they offer the beautiful lotuses that are blossoming on the river as a little present to Krishna. So the rivers embrace Murari's lotus feet. Urmi Bhujair Murarer. Alingana Stagitam Urmi Bhujair Murarer. So they go and they embrace Lord Murari's lotus feet. Drishtva tape brajapashun saharama gopai sancharayantam anuvenum udirayantam prema pravritta uditaha kusumavalivihi sakyurvyadat swavapusham buddha atapatram. So another beautiful verse where the gopis are glorifying the clouds. So what happens sometimes in Vrindavana when it's very hot and the scorching heat, as Krishna and Balram are playing the flute and they are dancing, the cloud, what happens with his love for Krishna, the clouds expand and they form a beautiful, soothing umbrella. So, giving shelter for Krishna, Balram, and the Gopas from the scorching heat of the sun, with droplets of water that are like groups of flowers. So, like with a gentle drizzle, with all the water droplets forming together, like as though flowers are all put together to form a beautiful umbrella. Sometimes in the temple, we see during Julan Yatra, they decorate the Julan, the top of the Julan, all our wonderful garland team in the temple. They form a beautiful canopy of flowers. So all the flowers are arranged in a row. Kusumavalivihi. So Avali means rose, like, so that's why Deepavali also, lighting of lamps like rose. So like that, the cloud, it gets beautiful droplets of water that join together to form a beautiful canopy to protect Krishna and Balram as they are playing the flute and enjoying themselves. Purna Pulindya Urugaya Padabjaraga Shri Kunkumena Dayitasana Manditena Taddarshana Smararujastrina Rushitena Limpantya Anana Kuche Shujahostadadi. Here the gopis are talking about the Aboriginal women of Vrindavana, that is the like the tribal women from Vrindavana. When they walk around Vrindavana and when they look at the grass and when they see the red kumkuma powder on the grass, they know that it has fallen from Shri Krishna's lotus feet. So, because, Krishna would have enjoyed with the gopis, and then there's this kumkuma red powder that is stuck onto his lotus feet, and that has fallen on the grass. And then these beautiful women, they take that kumkuma and they smear it all over their face and their chest. So, our acharyas explained that when we take to Krishna consciousness and when we get the touch of Shri Krishna, then all our material desires are satisfied. So just as how all these women, by taking this kumkuma that was fallen from the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, they had, women, they have lusty desires, and all that was completely satisfied just by getting the touch of Shri Krishna's lotus feet. Hantaya madrirabala haridasa varyo yad Rama Krishna charanas parasha pramodaha Manam tanoti sahago ganayostayorya Paniya suyavasa kandara kandamulai. So this is a beautiful verse that glorifies the Govardhana hill. So our acharyas give a beautiful purport to this verse. If you have time, please go and read it, because here they are describing how the Govardhana hill supplies Krishna and Balram with all that they need. So the translation here is actually quoted from Srila Prabhupada's translation from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And how the Govardhan hill is called as Haridasa Varya. That means the best of the servants of Krishna. Haridasa, servants of Krishna. Varya, the best. Once even His Holiness Bhaktirasamrita Swami Maharaj, when he was here in Sydney, he gave a beautiful lecture during the time of Govardhan Puja, explaining about how Govardhana Hill satisfies Sri Krishna through many, many different ways. So the Govardhan Hill, it gives the nice soft grass for Krishna to walk around, to play, and it gives fruits, flowers, different minerals, and then there are wonderful caves where Krishna and Balram and all the Gopas can go and play. They can sit around, they can eat, they can rest. And then there are beautiful rivers and lakes and waters that can quench the thirst of Krishna and Balram. Then there are flat surfaces where they can sit peacefully. And then there are even shining stones which they use as a mirror sometimes. So it's very beautifully explained how Govardhan is serving Sri Krishna so wonderfully. Sometimes even during the Govardhan Puja, we see a beautiful replica of the Govardhan in the temple where all this is very nicely depicted by the devotees. So here we see how the Govardhan Hill is glorified as a servant of Sri Krishna. We just have another couple of verses. Gagopakairanvanam nayator udara Venu svanai kalapadaistanu prishtu satyaha Aspandanam gatimatam pulakastarunam Niryoga pasha kritalakshanayor vichitram. So here the gopis are saying, oh my dear friends, as Krishna and Balram, as they walk through the forest and as they are tending the cows, they wear the ropes around their neck. So you know how the cowherd boys, they have a rope to just tend the cows. And also the ropes are used to bind the legs of the cows when they are milking. So just like, you know, normal cowherd boys, Krishna and Balram, so sweetly, they are carrying these ropes and they're just wearing it around their necks. And then when Krishna is playing his flute, it is so wonderful that it makes all the moving creatures to become stunned and static, just like how we saw all the cows, they were just stunned. And it makes all the non-moving creatures like the trees to actually tremble with ecstasy. So the trees and the branches and the leaves, they all become so ecstatic. So we also hear in one of the verses by Bilvamangal Thakur, where he says, Lokan Unmadayan Shruti Mukaraya Vamshini Nada Hashayan. That is how the whole world is enchanted by hearing Shri Krishna's flute music. The trees are ecstatic, the cows become stunned, the rocks are melting, and the sages are all just immersed. And how everyone is just so jubilant hearing Shri Krishna's flute music. Evam vidha bhagavato ya vrindavana charinaha varnayanto mito gopyaha kridastanmayatam yayu. So concluding the chapter, we see how thus narrating to one another all these beautiful playful pastimes of Krishna and Balram in Vrindavana, the gopis were immersed in the thoughts of Sri Krishna. So by taking inspiration from all these wonderful devotees of Sri Krishna, the highest form of love they exhibited, the gopis, we also try to follow in their footsteps, because we cannot become them, because we have our own anarthas and we are all struggling in this material world. But by hearing these beautiful verses, by meditating upon them, we are following in the footsteps of the gopis. So when we sing the Tulsi Arati, we sing, isn't it? That is my desire is to follow in the footsteps of the gopis. So like that, on that note, let us all immerse ourselves always by reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, from Bhagavad Gita, by hearing, by trying to memorize verses, by chanting, by singing, and by speaking to each other. We can enliven each other, and whether there is lockdown or whatever situation in our life, we can always remain positive, we can remain cheerful, and we can ultimately please Krishna. Because when we do all these sevas, we are trying to please Krishna, and when Krishna becomes pleased, then we are also pleased by serving our gurus. So that is the pathway. So on that note, we will end today's class. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. Thank you everyone for joining us.